I hope some of you recognize this. At the moment, what I've decided to show you for the sake of ease was CSDM4, not CSDM5. But we can do CSDM5 if and I can talk to you about how that can be done. But in the first place, I want you to note this is an infinite 3D space. It's a bit like a computer game. I don't know if any of you are gamers or any of you have built things in Unity, but you will recognize this if you do. And we can zoom out infinitely and we can zoom in infinitely. And we can guide people around this and talk to them about it. But what I want to be very clear to you is this is not a picture or a diagram of CSDM. This is a CMDB. There is data in these tables, and I can look at that data in these tables at any moment. So my first point, and I'm not doing this in the order, I'm sorry, Peter, but the order that you said this presentation was working, I'm just switching it up a bit. Same topic, slightly different order. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is how do we make this come alive for people who don't necessarily understand what a CSDM or a CMDB is and don't know why it should matter to them. So what I want to show you, the first thing is I'm going to turn some labels on, and they are labels that help understand what CSDM is. So let's zoom on in. I might be talking to a business person or a person who owns a business service offering. That person could be, let's say they own identity and access management. And I'm able to show them in this. I can show them identity and access management in this table if I want. I'm not going to do that right now, but I could show them that. And you'll see how I show different data records in the model as I go in a moment. But I would say to them, I and many others use identity and access management every day to do my job. So in our company, this is consumed, identity and access management to do our jobs. You have consumers, what you do sits in the sell and consume area of this model. But what you do has suppliers. Your identity and access management is absolutely dependent on certain things. The first thing that you're dependent upon in this is some application services. And those application services, they have suppliers. They're dependent on applications. And those applications run on servers. Now, if I am unaware of which servers run which applications, which make up the things that enable you to provide your service of identity and access management, then if anything ever were to go wrong with it, I wouldn't be able to quickly help you solve it. So one of the reasons that you have for me to be very, very up to date with the data here is so that I can quickly identify the constituent parts of your service and keep you running. There are many other reasons why you might want to know. You might want to check you're not being charged for tech that you don't actually use as part of your service. There are lots of reasons. So, and I can walk around the whole of the CSDM model doing this. I can show someone who owns a business application that it uses information objects and it contains SDLC components and it consumes application services, which again depend on applications which run on servers. I can walk someone through this. Now I'm going to show you a slightly different example. And in this example, I'm going to show you a global filter. So let's assume that the person I'm talking to is a person in my company called Tom Hatcher. Funny old thing, there is a guy in my company called Tom Hatcher who's on this call. And I'm going to therefore ask what in my CMDB contains or is assigned to Tom Hatcher. And I'm going to run that. Okay, so in my CMDB, there is a business application that's assigned to Tom Hatcher. Let's take a look at it. So I'm talking to Tom. Hey, Tom, I'm looking at Enterprise Financial Suite. That's the business application that's assigned to you. Now, what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take a look at what are the, and us in ServiceNow terms call this a service map, but I might want to say, what are the constituent parts of this service? So I want to look downstream. I'm going to go one hop downstream. Okay, so I can see the Enterprise Financial Suite consumes 5 application services. So he has 5 suppliers. Now, the data for all 5 of them is red. That might be worrying. If I say to Tom, did you know that we have incomplete data regarding constituent parts of your service? And I want to see what those application services themselves, what do they depend on? Which application do they depend on? Well, they depend on two applications, a Workday application, SAP application. And then Tom may be pleased to know that those applications, the data is complete for those. So that's good. That's a good sign. Now let's see which servers those applications sit on. Okay, so I can see already that those applications sit on 14 servers. And you'll note this is a little bit like a service map, but it's not quite like a service map because it does some other things. Number one, it enables me to see what depends on what in the context of CSDM. We're still looking at a CMDB. We're not looking at a white screen with some abstract names of CIs and various things. We're still looking at our CMDB and we're looking at it and we're also seeing that these red data records tell me that there's a problem with the data there. There's something missing. So as I talk to Tom now about his business application, I can show him that we have some issues with completeness of data and we need his help. We can give him all those good reasons why it's advantageous to him if we know and have complete data. So, for example, let's take a look at what some of those problems are. Well, for Workday financials, I can see there have been 12 assessments run on it, and I have issues. I don't know who it's owned by. So that's my first I'm going to make a point of to Tom. I don't know who owns Workday Financials EMEA. Tom, would you help me find out? Because if we have a problem and it's because there's a problem with the Workday Financials EMEA, I am not going to know who to go to solve that. So I will not quickly solve your problem. So how about you give some of your resources to helping me find out who owns that? I'm able to have this conversation with Tom, with him seeing why I want to do that and seeing the context of this in CMDB. So this is kind of my first point. We can help people understand in a world that matters to them. I'm going to go back to my other version of it. We can help them understand either at a macro level or at their very specific business application or business service level, why this stuff matters and how they can and why that will be useful to us. So that's point one. I don't think we get success maturing a CMDB according to CSDM if we don't get the Tom Hatchers and the owners of identity and access management of this world involved in it and understanding it. So I don't want to get some PowerPoint slides or an empty diagram of CSDM, but I want to show Tom Hatcher a CMDB that looks like a CSDM with his own business application in it and his own application services and applications and servers and so on in it. So that's kind of my first point. I want to be able to show someone their CMDB in a way that even if they aren't a CMDB or CSDM expert, they can kind of understand what I'm talking about. And let's face it, even if they don't understand at first, they're going to find this slightly entertaining. It's probably the best visual they've ever seen in an enterprise software environment. And therefore, I win maybe 5 more minutes of their attention than I normally would. I'm going to pause here for a little moment for chat and just see if there are any questions that someone would like me or comments that someone would like me to kind of look on or talk to. I can see Mitchell saying
right, I'm hearing
we must have been a fly on the wall in one of the meetings. Yeah, that's we've tried to be fly on the wall in a lot of CMDB owners meetings to find out what we should do here. Tom, do you want to do the other question?
Sure. So Ed Kester was in first with the question of, is this bi-directional? So yes, you've understood it's displaying CMDB information pulled directly from the CMDB tables. Currently, it isn't bi-directional. You can't create or make changes in the model and have it then change the underlying data in CMDB. That was deliberate for the time being. We've considered it carefully, and for the time being, we've decided against that. But you can very quickly get into either the table or the individual records, and you can filter down that table in the model to for example, records that have got problems. Maybe you want to see just your orphan CIs in a particular table and then immediately open that filtered list in ServiceNow to make changes. You can do that.
Yeah. And I also saw that Mitchell asked the question, do you have to have CSDM in the CMDB already built out to use this? I'm going to get onto that in a moment. The answer is definitely no, you don't have to. Not only do you not have to, but this is actually going to guide you on your journey from start to wherever you decide to finish, from wherever your start is, in fact. So it could be that you're mildly mature in this, or it could be that you're not at all mature. But I'll show you how we're going to guide you on a journey towards, let's just call it more maturity.
Yeah, and a question from Derek Leal. So you asked, do service maps provide input? So you saw a bit there of Matt showing how records relate to each other. That is pulled directly from the CI relationships table. So we do bring that information into the model. You can then explore upstream and downstream relationship maps from any given record, any selected records that you'd like to see. What else have we
Cool.
got?
Of course, I'm happy to take questions at the end as well. So I'll be pausing then. And if someone wants to draw our attention to, if someone wants to draw our attention to a particular question, or indeed contact me afterwards with questions, that will be absolutely fine. So
just one more, Matt. Sorry, just before we move on, because I think it's
yeah.
important. As do you have to have CSDM in CMDB already built out to use this? This was Mitchell again. So
answer that question.
No. Yeah, thanks, Mitchell. So absolutely, the purpose of this, one of the main purposes of the app and the model is to show you where you haven't got CSDM built out, and to help you to do that, and to go on the right path, the right journey, doing the right bits first for your organization to build out CSDM completion.
So I'm now going to turn, I'm going to move on, and I'm going to turn to, and I'm going to lead with another question from Toshi, who's asked, great visuals to drive priorities and discussions to ensure CMDB is complete, correct, and compliant. Good. Number one, is there a way to represent the progress towards CSDM crawl, walk, run, and fly? And two, how is foundational data related and represented in this visualization? So I'm gonna deal mostly with question one here. We can deal with question two on another occasion. I'm happy to do that directly, but I'm going to deal with question two now. So, sorry, question one of those now. So it's all very well. Let me now explain to you a little bit about how this model works. So wherever you see, well, red, amber, and green mean what red, amber, and green always mean. And so this is telling you you've got issues in a lot of your tables. You've got data issues in nearly all of them. And a lot of people know that. They might not know exactly what those issues are, but they know they have a lot of issues. And so what we've done is we thought it was kind of important to represent the phases crawl, walk, run, and fly in this model. So as I bring up my phases on the left-hand side, I can actually see what my percentage maturity is by phase. And sure, I've got a lot of problems, but that's because I'm looking at this as if I was in fly phase, and it's not giving me any direction about which I should deal with next. So all I do is I peel back the phases and I watch my model change, and I get to a point where it's mostly green. And at that point, I can see at foundation, I'm mostly green. Now I'm going to ignore business units, which is amber at the moment, just for the sake of time. And I'm going to focus on these two red tables here for a moment. So I can see that if I wanted to get my model mature to or complete to the foundation phase, I need to solve my SDLC components issues and my business applications issues. Well, as I look at SDLC components, I can very quickly see there are no records found. Probably means I'm not using the table. If I'm not using the table, I'll delete it. I have the ability to delete things and change preferences in the model. So I would delete that because I don't want to see something as red in my model if I'm intentionally not using it. It's just not helpful. However, business applications I am using. So let's see what the problems are. So I have an issue with required fields complete. And so that's my problem with business applications. So job number one, if I want to move on, my CSDM maturity is to solve my required fields in business applications. That's task one. Okay, so let's assume that's gone green. What is task two? Well, I just simply click on crawl phase and see what goes red in that phase. So I can see it over here. I can see I'll have issues with servers and application services and technical services. Let's take a look at servers for a start. So just to make it really clear, I'm going to go back to foundation, and I can see at foundation phase, all of my assessments of data were fine. So I'm going to go to accrual phase. At accrual phase, there are now no longer 3 assessments, but 6. And I have a few that I have a problem with. I have a problem with duplicate CIs, and I have a problem with hardware CIs with serial numbers. Should we see how big a problem those things are? Well, I just go into a bit more detail. I can see I've got 46,190 hardware CIs that don't have serial numbers. And I've got 90,377 duplicate CIs. So I got a bit of work to do there. So that is jobs number 2 and 3. Now we're going to get into something of kind of CSDM maturity philosophy here. Again, I'm not the best qualified person to talk on that, but being qualified has never been a prerequisite in my life for talking about stuff. So I'm going to have a go. I could just carry on in vanilla CSDM maturity, and I might say the next thing after I've dealt with my duplicate CIs and my hardware CIs with serial numbers missing in the service table is to go to application services and take a look at what the problems are there. They're down here. And then also after that, I might go over to technical services and see what the problems are there. I could see, what have I got? I've got services with owners missing. Okay, is that a big problem? No, it's quite a small problem. I've got 65 servers with no owners. Maybe I'm going to go after that next. I'm not sure. But that would enable me to bring up my whole CMDB in kind of a level maturity way. But my experience is that's not actually what companies want or need to do. More likely, for example, they may be saying, no, we need to get our servers table more mature. We want to focus on that table. And so, in fact, what I'll do is I'll see what will come up with walk. When I get to walk phase, I'll have dealt with duplicate CIs and serial numbers. I'll now have to deal with orphan CIs. And I may go further and say, okay, what about all the way up to fly phase? At fly phase, I've got 10 assessments and dealt with duplicate CIs, orphan CIs, serial numbers, and so on. But I now have to deal with stale CIs. So I can choose what is my path towards maturity on an individual data table or on across the board. But I can still go further. Okay. So that one made me think of something. If there may be reasons why I don't think that stale CIs in my server's table is a fly level piece of level of maturity, I should deal with it sooner, potentially. Or maybe I'm a consultant telling a client they should deal with stale CIs in the service table sooner. Doesn't matter what the clever guys at ServiceNow made as their kind of generic maturity phases, I don't care. So in this tool, what we'll do if that's the case is I'll simply go in and take a look for my assessments table. And I'm going to say, well, where is my servers? Where are my servers assessments? Here are my servers assessments down here. Okay, I can see my servers assessments. Here's my stale CIs assessment. Let's take a look. It's at fly phase. All right, I'm going to change it because for our purposes, and this could be because of my industry or because of my country or because of our history in this company with our CMDB, or it could be because of this outcome I want, or it could be because of I'm dealing with a critical business service and I want to deal with stuff sooner for my critical business services. It could be any of those. And Mark Bodman has just started talking about outcome-based maturity, and that's what this here is for. We can say in that instance, I'm going to make it accrual phase assessment so that we deal with it earlier. I'm actually not. I'm just going to put it back to fly so I don't get told off for people for messing up the demo. But not only can I change which phase it's in, but I could also change the threshold for making it red. So why is it red at 67%? Maybe I think if there's more than 40% that's stale, it should go red. I don't know. It could be whatever number I or my knowledgeable consultant tells me it should be. But I have the ability to customize the route to maturity according to whatever outcome I want. And that outcome may be simply generic crawl, run, fly maturity, but it may be based on a particular service or a particular outcome. It may be based on a particular table. But using these crawl, walk, run, fly kind of tabs at the side helps me know whatever that path is, whatever I've created in my preferences. So then at that point, I'm able to once again talk to people about our journey to maturity. How are we doing? How were we doing? And how will we be doing in a given period of time? I'm going to pause again for questions. Tom, are there questions here now that I should be looking at?
Yep. So Gary asked about the red, green, and yellow on the paths themselves.
Okay,
So
cool. I'm going to get to that next.
we get to that.
Don't
Okay.
worry. I'll just make a note to get to the paths and the red,
Yeah.
green, and amber there. Yeah.
Okay. Kenneth asked about whether there's an option to export the view for greater context. I don't know if you could talk about your view on that, your thoughts on that, Matt.
Yeah, so I wonder what that context is that Kenneth is talking about, because I think CSDM is the context I want to use when I'm looking at this. If there is a different context, we'd be delighted to get into a chat about it. But our expectation and hope is that, when you saw that first view I showed of Tom Hatcher's business application and the service model according to his business application, we'll be saving those. And so Tom Hatcher will always have his own view, and therefore Tom Hatcher will have his own license and view of this. So there is no limit to the number of people in an organization that could be looking at the data that matters to them for their own service or their own role using this model. This doesn't have to be something that you're showing on a one-to-many basis. This could be a many-to-many. This could just be or one-to-one. Every person having their own view of the things they want to and need to see. Whilst at the same time, you could be a CMDB owner who's looking at the whole thing and able to talk with this on a big screen in a room with people in a workshop and explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and why you want them to help you.
Okay. Angela and Derek are asking how graphics intensive is the UI. So we've deliberately made it so it's not graphically intensive or demanding in any way. So it works with basic professional laptops that we built it in. It's built on Unity and it runs in WebGL within your browser. It has graphical options as well. So it automatically detects your frame rate and will drop the graphic quality. But even at the lowest quality, it doesn't look much different to how you see it here. Yeah, it's really not a problem on any kind of laptop, really.
And that's actually the same for whatever number of CIs you have. So we have a company trialing this who have 105 million CIs who are just cruising around it like I do here. And the reason for that is because actually, if you think about the graphics, what's required to show the graphics, having 105 million CIs doesn't matter because I'm never showing 105 million anythings. If we look on the screen at the moment, I'm showing about 50 somethings, and I'm never showing more than that. As you'll see in the third section of this, we'll show a few more things, but never more than about 120 things on a screen. So we've thought really carefully about how you visualize things and how you summarize things in the CMDB to make it feel alive and understandable, but not to make your mind go crazy with too much to see. Any others, Tom?
It's a question from Toshi about whether there's a way to report progress on the CSDM journey over time. For example, the ability to show monthly and quarterly progress.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a future version of this whereby we have a timeline along the bottom, which we haven't yet released to the store, but we can do this with a timeline along the bottom where you can put project phases and milestones in, and you can look both back to what you've done in the past and where you've come from, and you can model to the future as well and say, this is what we'll do next, and this is the impact it will have. And this can be richer, right? This is an infinite 3D space. You can imagine at the moment, this is a digital twin of the data in your CMDB. It isn't doing anything more than showing you data health in your CMDB. Now, imagine if we decide to bring asset management data into this as well. And if we bring security into this, and we bring in observability data into it too, then it starts to become a 3D digital twin of something much bigger and broader. But at the moment, this is just being, and therefore, as you do what Toshi has suggested, you would start to be able to model out not only where my data is going in the future, but the completeness of that data, what that would do for certain assets, certain services, what value it might create for certain clients, etc. At the moment, though, we don't have the timeline in this. Any others, Tom? So someone's asked something about how you get it and pricing and all that stuff. We won't talk about that here. Happy for you to contact us.
A couple of people asking about CSDM5, Matt, and
yeah. Okay, so CSDM5 is a cool topic. So CSDM5, as you know, some of these get different names. There are some other tables in them, and in some cases there can be various tables, not totally locked down, and people will use those in different ways. And then there are also different visuals that are being used in CSDM5. Now, we've got kind of an interim solution that helps. So you're able to add other tables to this model. You're also able to rename tables, and you're able to choose which assessments you apply to the tables that you've added. So therefore, you are able to bring in the extra tables that are CSDM5 based. Now, you can imagine if there's a various tables area, it's difficult to lock that down in an integration, because which of the various am I going to show? So what we've chosen at the moment to do is give you the ability to choose which of those various you want to pull in and show in the model and what names you want to give them. So that's our way of taking you stepwise towards CSDM5. Now, at some point, we are also working with Mark and Jamie and the team on the other visualizations. So we're going to have a point where you can toggle and choose, do you want to see it in this view of CSDM? Or do you want to see the left to right view? Or do you want to see the kind of more logical architectural view of it? All of these things will become available in the visualization with the goal of helping bring to life what's going on in an organization on a service level view. Any other questions? So someone's asked about compatibility and compliance. Yes, we are. We stay compliant with latest versions. Yep.
So a question about domain separation and whether this would work in a domain separated instance. I was just halfway through writing the response. We've been working with a couple of service providers to achieve this soon. We have global filtering at the moment, so you can filter the whole model by any column on any of the tables, including domain. And then in the near future, we'll have the ability to then save a set of filters for a particular user or role, and then those people would automatically see that saved view, and that way we'd achieve a view of a domain separated instance. So yeah, that's coming.
Someone's asked if this is available for FedRAMP. The answer is yes, it is. I'm going to move on.
Continue.
Yeah, I'll move on with my third point. So my third point is this should make it quicker and more efficient to find data issues and to pinpoint exactly where they are and to lead others through that journey with you without them losing context or where they are. Now, many of you may have been through the difficulty of trying to show someone who is not a CMDB expert something in the CMDB. And as you click through the tables and maybe show something on a dashboard and do other things on tables, it becomes difficult for someone who's not a CMDB pro to keep up with where you are. So context is really important to us here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump back up as if we were at fly phase. And don't worry, there's lots of red here. I get that. We've already covered the fact that we'll show you the order in which to do things using the phases. But let's see if I can quickly pinpoint where data issues are. So we can see all these tables have data issues, but as I zoom in closer, I can see these assessment numbers. They differ per table, and I can see on my assessment wheel, I can see sort of a proportion of data that's good, data that's bad, data that's somewhere in between. I'm going to jump into my servers table, and with a single click, I can now see all of the assessments run against the data assessments for my servers table. And on the left-hand side of these assessments, I can see the definition of the assessment if I hover over an assessment, and I can see what's good, what's bad, what's indifferent, so somewhere in between. Now, I may not want to be doing this on a whole table. Like in this model, I've got 92,000 servers. It's good to know that there are issues with my servers table, but I probably want to make a selection. And I probably actually want to know which are Tom's servers or which are my servers, or which are the servers for a given that supply services to a particular business service. In this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a filter, and I'm going to say I want to know where the name of the server contains the word ASA. And I'm just going to take a look at those servers, and I'm going to run it. So as I run this selection, I get to see I've got 42 ASA servers. They all have issues with the data. They're all red. There's all of them have data immaturity. Now, whenever I run a selection, the selection persists through into the 2D tabular view in ServiceNow. All I need to do is click on this ServiceNow icon here, and you will see, here we go. These are my 42 tables that I wanted to look at in the ServiceNow table. Anytime I'm looking at something in the 3D view, I can just go straight to look at it in the ServiceNow tables. I don't need to be a genius or I don't need to be a CMDB expert who knows how to navigate their way through. Let's look at one particular server, this one, ASA 9857 Fabric. So this one has 12 assessments applied. Half of them are good, half of them are bad. Its serial number's not complete. Its location is not complete. Again, let's take a look at it in ServiceNow. I just click on that. Here it is. And as you would expect in any self-respecting view of a software program, the serial number is not complete. So I can quickly jump between the views. But the point I want to make here is I'm looking at right down in the weeds of my data. I'm very deep in here, and I'm looking at a nice little summary of what's complete and what's not complete in one particular CI. Don't know if that's a task that would often be done, but I just want to show that level of granularity. And yet I have not lost context. If I'm talking to someone about this server who knows everything about servers but very little about CMDB, I'm simply able to zoom back, zoom out, and say, we know where we are. This is ASA 9857 Fabric. It's in the servers table. It sits in the managed technical services domain of my CSDM. I still have a very good view of my parent-child relationships. I know that my business service offerings depend on application services, which depend on applications themselves and which run on servers. I can still see, in fact, the whole of my CMDB as it pertains to CSDM, whilst looking at this very specific record here and the issues in the data and what need to be solved. I can just zoom back in and get back to it. So I can quickly pinpoint issues and know what they are, even on a very specific level or on a selection or just at a table level. I can see what those problems are, the size of them, what I need to do to solve it. Now, down to that question of the different color of paths. It was a good observation that they're different colors. Well done. Point one. Point two, you may or you may not have noticed that the paths are also different widths. Some are narrow, some are wide, some are somewhere in between. The width of the paths tells us information as much as the color of the path. So the width of the path tells me, am I expecting a lot of relationships between these two tables or a few? So this narrow green path up here because it's narrow, I know I'm not expecting many relationships between my business service offerings and my application services. But I can see I am expecting a lot of relationships between application services and applications, and similarly from applications to servers, because they're wide paths. Now, the color of the path, now you know that piece of information. In fact, you probably know what the color means. The color tells you what proportion of those I'm expecting are actually in place. And if I bring those path labels back up, we can get into the detail of that. So right here, I have a narrow green path. It's narrow because I'm only expecting 95 relationships between the tables. It's green because I have 89 of them there. It's almost complete. This one over here between technical service offerings and application services, it's narrow because I'm only expecting 124. I have none, so it's red. This wide one here is wide because I'm expecting 1,099. It's narrow, it's green because I have nearly all of them there, 1,083. So with that, armed with that information, what the information that this model communicates to our eyes, we're amazingly good at interpreting 3D space. We've been doing it for about 500 million years. And we are able to see a lot here. We're able to see which tables have data issues. Very few clicks, we can see what within those are my issues. And then we can see where we have issues with relationships between tables. And we can see if those are going to be big jobs to solve or smaller jobs to solve. How far along the task are we? I think I'm going to stop here. I think I've showed you about what a CMDB would look like if it could choose what it looked like, with the goal of bringing clarity to complexity in mind and getting greater understanding across the organization. I have a feeling that to the CMDB config expert, this visualization is nothing more than a pretty 3D view. They actually can deal with what they need to deal with in ServiceNow. They're experts and they're great at doing it. However, to everyone else that cares about a service level view of an organization, be they in the ServiceNow team or outside of the ServiceNow team, I think this is helping them do three things. It's enabling a conversation which makes clarity come to people who don't normally have clarity. It's showing a path towards maturity from whichever phase you're currently at to whichever phase you next want to move to. And then it's quickly and efficiently showing you where your data issues lie and where you need to go to solve them. I think I'll stop sharing there and we'll go back to questions. Tom, do you want to just help me with what some, I can see there are lots of questions here.
Yeah, I've been responding directly to a few. Let's have a look. So, yeah, another question about extending the visualizations to other types of data within ServiceNow. So showing impact analysis and trends. So and deploying and change deployments. So yeah, I've said, Matt, that we're keen to get feedback and suggestions for what modules would be useful to be visualized next and layered into on top of this model.
Absolutely. We're very open to which is the next thing. We know there are next things. It's just which is the one with the highest priority that solves problems that people have. I just want to return to the performance thing because on navigating around, it makes no difference, just like I said. And any kind of enterprise $500 laptop is fine. However, running the scheduled job with the assessments does take time, and that does have an impact. But the way that this runs typically is it runs the scheduled job overnight. Now you're able, as an administrator, to run a scheduled job whenever you want and to run it on which part of the model you want. You can choose to be which tables you run. So if you've made some changes to certain tables, you can then run it on those tables again, and then it will be up to date immediately. But if you don't do that, it runs the scheduled job overnight. And what we're typically talking about is a number of minutes if you're up to high hundreds of thousands, low millions of CIs and relationships. But if you're in the hundreds of millions of CIs and hundreds of millions of relationships, you're talking a number of hours, and you're talking about being a little bit tactical about which of the ones you run the scheduled job on. So there will be the very, very largest of CMDBs will need to think a bit about that. But for everyone else, no thought required. It runs a scheduled job every night. It takes a few minutes or maybe up to an hour, and you see the next day your up-to-date view of it. So it feel that there are lots of other questions. If people would like to be in touch with me and ask those questions, I'm really happy for that to happen. I will just share my screen again and you'll be able to see my contact details. Here we go. So here's my contact details. But I just want to get that first point across again. While we're absolutely dependent on PowerPoint to do our best to describe complex and non-physical things, we're always making people do mental gymnastics. The first charts and graphs became kind of mainstream about 160 years ago. They require a great deal of human brain compute to try and draw sense from them. And it's why so much misunderstanding exists. And it's why massive 120 slide PowerPoint decks exist. And it's why terrifically complex PowerPoint slides exist, because we're trying to do enough to get that information in there. Whereas in a 3D image, our brains pick up tons of information, even subconsciously, that bring clarity to what could be complex situations. And what we've really done with visualization here is we've given the feeling and the look of physical body to some non-physical things. So we've made them things you can look at. And by making them things you can look at and you can see the connections between them, everything comes alive. As Mark Bodman has said a few times, it's like Google Maps, and you can zoom in and see as much detail as you need to on the things you care about. Any other closing comments, Peter, or indeed any other questions, Tom or Peter, that you think we should answer before we stop?
Several questions about licensing, which of course we'll take offline. If anyone would like to contact Matt directly, we can talk about licensing.
Yeah, and genuinely do feel free to contact me on email or on LinkedIn, and I will deal with every single question.
A couple of people asking whether we can do demos for their teams, which of course we're happy to do.
Sure. Again, take it offline with me. I'm happy to do it. Our business model enables. I'm like a non-skilled floater in the company, and I can do things like demos for people's teams. I have time to do that. I don't actually have a real job, so it works perfectly if someone wants to use my time for that. Any other questions? I think we'll call it to a close there. Is that right, Peter? Is that how you do this thing?
Yeah. Yep. So thank you so much, Matt and Tom, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Very interesting comments. People really believe in the need for visualization. So thanks again, everyone. We'll have this posted both in the ServiceNow community site and in our YouTube channel within the next week. So thank you all. And just to give a tease, you mentioned Mark Bodman. Mark Bodman should be speaking on the Digital Service Forum in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned all. Thank you again.
Yeah, and I just want to say hi. Great job, Matt and Tom and Peter for pulling this together. It's been a while there, Matt. We've been talking for some years now, and you come a long way. I really love what you got.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mark. And your help and Jamie's and other people in your team has been absolutely central to us getting this done. We were just a bunch of visualization gaming geeks until you told us what CMDB should look like, and then things kind of came together. So that's been great, and we really appreciate your time you spend with us, helping us develop it further. So thank you.
But it's been a long road, and I think we got more to go. But man, it's you come a long way, and it's pretty cool to see what you got. So it's just and I think the reaction I saw in the chat was pretty positive overall. So I think you're going to go places.
Good. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys.